Greetings. My name is Dr. Waddell Brooks, Sr., your host, and this is Community Focus. We're very fortunate to have with us uh, Reverend William Owen, former pastor of the Waukegan First United Methodist Church. He is now relocated in Hermitage, Tennessee. Good morning, Reverend Owen.
Good morning, Dr. Brooks. How are you today?
Right. Happy. I really was fortunate to have the to knowing you for the months that you were here at the Waukegan First United Methodist Church, and I've enjoyed the lunches that we had at Olive Garden in Gurnee.
Olive Garden, yes.
Yeah, and so what happened is that we went Dutch, or either you took care of the lunch one time, the next time I took care of it, But yeah, the relationship was great. And I just love talking with pastors. There's something unique about pastors that people gain. And I want to share that relationship with Lake County. Remember, Lake County is approximately about 800,000 people. But like I always say, I don't know how many up at 5 a.m. on Sunday morning to listen to the program, but I understand there's quite a audience.
We'll hope they're all up.
Yeah, right. Well, tell us. Let's start from the beginning here. There's maybe a lot of people here in Lake County that don't know you, but. Discuss your ministry in Waukegan.
Well, I was fortunate to serve the Waukegan First United Methodist Church the last 6 years of my ministry.
Okay.
I did not go into ministry until I was 50 years old.
Oh.
And I was fortunate in the ensuing 20 years to serve some wonderful churches, Waukegan being the last one where I served for 6 years. And as I look at all those churches, a predominant theme was love of God and love of neighbor, and the acceptance of the human weakness of the human race, that we are all flawed and sinful, and striving to work our way back to the image of God in which we were created.
This is fantastic. Ladies and gentlemen, again, we're talking with Reverend William Owen, retired, United Methodist Church, the first United Methodist Church in Waukegan. And we're going to be talking about some reflections that he had on ministry from retirement.
Well, it is an understanding, I guess, of God's will in my life. As you know, Dr. Brooks, I was an atheist for 15 years and had a conversion experience in my mid-30s.
Okay.
And was called into ministry at 50.
Mm-hmm.
And so I continue to grow in understanding of God's love, to grow in understanding of my own frailty, and yet turning my life over to God and God's plan has been my goal from the time of my conversion experience when I was 35. Throughout my ministry and the last 6 years in Waukegan, I was honored to do the best I could to follow God's plan for my life and prayed that I would be part of God's plan for the world. And so it was a wonderful ministry. Everything is not perfect in ministry, as all pastors know. We have ups and downs. Retiring itself actually has taken me a lot longer adjustment than I expected. I had worked for the most part since I was 16 years old. And so retiring from ministry was a gigantic change, physically and psychologically. I changed, and I had been in northern Illinois for 20 years and in Lake County for 12. And when I retired, I moved to the Tennessee area, moved closer to my grandchildren, and to a warmer climate for my health. And so it was a dramatic change that I'm still adjusting to. But I talk to other pastors in retirement, and we adjust, but there's no such word as retirement in the Bible. And so I look at part-time ministries where I'll be able to benefit and still remain part of God's plan and still contribute to our world as we see it.
Pastor Owen, that was a pastor that wrote a book called A Purpose-Driven Life. But what is our purpose in life?
God has a purpose for each one of us, and certainly Rick Warren, when he wrote the book Purpose-Driven Life, drew on the fact that in God's plan for our universe and our world, we have a part in that, and he calls us in our faithfulness as Christians. If we're going to claim the name Christian, we have to live out his call for our lives. Now, the next question is naturally, how do we know what our call is?
Okay. That's
difficult. It's a great question, and it is difficult. Through prayer, discernment, reading Scripture, seeing what we're good at and what we're not good at. God uses our gifts and graces as part of the plan, and if we're not good at something, that's not something we should pursue. God did not call me to be a brain surgeon, and the entire world can rejoice because of that. God called me to be a pastor, but it took me a long time to recognize that. I didn't follow God's will right away. I was stubborn and I was willful, and he called and I didn't listen. Then I listened and I didn't agree. Then I agreed and didn't go. And finally, I went into ministry and realized he'd been calling me for a long time, and I simply did not recognize it. We live in this world, and some are called to be pastors, some are called to be plumbers and doctors and lawyers and airplane pilots, but we're all called into a ministry if we're going to claim the name Christian, and that ministry can be as a pilot or a lawyer or a plumber. We just can give our testimony on the train on the way to work, at a party or with friends, anywhere that looking at Matthew 28:19, we are to go out into the world and baptize all the nations in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit.
In other words, in order to promote his ministry, God appointed pastors, evangelists, apostles, teachers, and prophets. I guess those that he designated to promote his word. Absolutely,
those are the spiritual gifts mentioned. That each of us have some of them, and none of us have all of them.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So we're each unique, different human beings with different gifts and different graces. We also have different faults and different weaknesses, yet we all do have faults and weaknesses, and Satan attacks us where we're weakest, not where we're strongest. And God expects us to live out of what we're strong at, to live out his plan for us in this world. And you see evidence of it in every direction and across all denominations of people living faithfully, mm-hmm. doing the best they can to reclaim that image of God.
Now, what happened on God? He created a perfect world, but in what he did, he allowed his creators, to kill his creation. Now that's God moving in his own way, right?
God created the universe and man, and especially man in his image.
Mm-hmm.
And out of free will,
okay,
Satan and sin pulled us away from his image and Christian perfection to a fallen state. However, we didn't kill his creation. We wounded it.
Okay,
and it awaits healing and restoration. And that's what we pray for, that revival, that healing and restoration of the human race, that we can return to that perfect image of God in which he designed us. But through our free will, we have been in a fallen state, and we're trying to, through living our lives and setting an example of the gospel in the world, reclaim that image of God.
Now, I'm still learning something from you because I always had his creation killed the creator, but they really did not. They wounded, and that's very important.
Wounded is a lot better word than killed. We didn't kill the creation; we wounded it.
Right, right.
And so you're right. What we have to do is work in our ministry and God's plan to restore it.
Okay. Now that brings me to another point here. It's very important to read and study the Bible, and that's daily, right?
That's daily, and sometimes I read it more than once a day.
Okay.
Sometimes I read it for something I'm teaching at the church. Sometimes I read it for myself, but I try and read it at least once a day. And we look at our country has probably more interpretations of the Bible, more translations of the Bible than almost any country in the world. Some countries have an official translation, and that's the only one that's allowed to be published.
Mm-hmm.
But we have dozens and dozens and dozens of denominations in the United States, each subscribing to one version of the Bible or the other. And I don't think there are bad versions of the Bible. I think some are better than others. But the important part is we pick a Bible we like and we read it, and we're consistent in reading it. And when we, whether you've studied the Bible for 12 years in college and seminary and graduate school, or whether you're new to the Bible, we all need to read it and we need to learn from it every day. People ask me, well, is the Bible literal or allegorical or metaphorical or symbolic? And I say yes to all of those. It is the only book in the world I've ever read that can be written at 2 and 3 and 4 levels at the same time. It is an incredible book, and it is the most published book in the history of the human race for a very good reason.
Yeah, I had mentioned several times that we have over 3,000 denominations in the world, but that's a man trying to interpret the Bible.
It is man trying to interpret the Bible, and in our ego, we tend to think, well, what we believe is the only thing, and if somebody believes something slightly differently, who's still a Christian, still accepts the Apostles' Creed and believes all the basic core aspects of the faith, and then we start fighting over the little tiny things that are not as important as presenting an image to the world of a faithful people who are trying to follow in the footsteps of Christ. We cannot change the Bible to something we want. We cannot use the Bible to beat up other people. We have to accept the Word of God as it is, not trying to convince others to what they call proof text, or take a tiny scripture and use it to beat people up with. That's not what God's call is. God's call is to love God with all our heart and our mind and our soul, and to love our neighbor as ourselves. In this, we fulfill the gospel. In this, we set an example of the gospel in the world. I think it was St. Benedict, perhaps, maybe St. Francis, that said, preach the gospel every day and use words if you have to. Okay. Our example is more important than our words.
Fantastic. I was often thinking about it. When you visit a cemetery, you see a date of birth and a date of dash and a date of death, but it's what you do between those dash that counts.
It's Between the Dashes is right, and I think I read a story one time. It was called Between the Dashes. What happens between the time we are born and the time we die? In doing many, many funerals in my ministry and trying to reflect that person's life at the service, I came to realize that whatever few words we pastors can say at a person's service cannot really reflect the totality of their lives. They lived a human story. With all the human stories, ups and downs and backs and forth, they had joy and they had sorrow, they had pain, they had laughter, and that's a human life, and no pastor can reflect that in a few words at the memorial or funeral service. We
have so many people, and this is all over the world. they try to gain the whole world, but in gaining the world, you lose your own soul, right?
In the one scripture, there's Jesus tells a parable about the man who was very wealthy, and all his silos were filled with grain, and he didn't know what to do, so he's going to build more silos.
Okay.
And the Lord comes to him and said, "You fool, you will be taken this very evening, and others will inherit your grain."
Mm-hmm.
And that's a wonderful story in that it tells us that the material things we cling to and the material things we attempt to accumulate rust and spoil and decay and mildew. None of them are eternal. The treasures we build in heaven through helping others, through giving to others, helping churches, helping charities, those are our legacy. Those are what are the treasure we build for eternity. You cannot hold the treasure you build for eternity in your hand.
Mm-hmm.
You can only hold the treasure you build for eternity in your heart.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes, because you can take the whole world with you to the cemetery, but you're gonna leave it there.
You when you make your departure, you go as you came into the world with nothing, except the treasures you build.
Right. God gave man a living soul, and that soul goes back once you take your last breath. Because what's the scripture on that? You about your soul. The day that you take your last breath, your soul leaves and go to eternity.
Absolutely, and when you take your last breath and your brain stops actively being alive, your soul returns to God, and your soul is both tough as can be and fragile as can be simultaneously. Martin Luther described our soul as like the bottom of an unclean bird cage, and I like that description. But our soul is eternal.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Our soul is with us forever. And it's the only part of us that is, because it is immaterial, it is spiritual. And so when we take these trade-offs and we decide we're going to seek money or power or have fleshy infidelities, then we are selling our soul cheap on the market.
Mm-hmm.
And right now the market is a glut with souls, because so many people want money or power or the things of the human race and not of God. We have to bring people around to see that those are not the things of God. Those are not where God is calling us. That God is calling us, in fact, away from those things into a faithfulness to Him, a faithfulness to life, a faithfulness to spouses and friends. And that's important, and that has integrity.
Tell us about you were involved in organizing annual trips to Israel. Tell us how important that was to you.
It was incredibly important to me. The first time I went, I had always wanted to go to Israel. When the wheels touched down in Tel Aviv, I had tears in my eyes. I was in the land where Jesus walked. I was in the land where He taught. I was in the land where He was crucified and resurrected, where He ascended. And it was overwhelming to me. I couldn't assimilate it all until I'd been there 3 or 4 times. I went 3 times taking tours there, and I went once on my own. And most of the time I spent studying at Hebrew University on the Christian perfection as it may have emanated from the book of Leviticus in the Old Testament. Mm-hmm. So Israel is to me a magic land, not magic in the occult, but magic as in the Christian spiritual sense. Mm-hmm. That we don't know if Jesus put His foot here or there, and we know that there are people selling souvenirs there and hucksters, but it is the land where Jesus walked. The Nazareth is still there, and Bethlehem is still there. Jerusalem and the Temple Mount is still there. And we marvel and glory at that. But My great joy is taking people to Israel who are going for the first time,
Mm-hmm.
and their eyes are opened and they're awestruck by all the places and about the enormity of the life of Jesus Christ as it came out of the Holy Land.
I know you had several people. Let's see, that was the former, Mayor of Gurnee. I think his brother.
Harry Welton.
Harry Welton, yes, I think he passed, didn't he? Is he still living?
He's alive. Theo Carroll was the one who got me involved in these, and he passed away.
Oh, Carroll passed away. Okay.
He passed away a few days before my second trip.
Mm.
And so it was a bit overwhelming. I preached at his funeral on a Friday and left for Israel on Monday morning. So it was a bit overwhelming because he had gotten me involved in the Israel trips, and he had been to Israel 52 times.
Wow.
And loved Israel. Israel was part of his heart and soul. And I'd say, though I've only been there 4 times, Israel's part of my heart and soul, too.
Mm-hmm. And each time you go is just a new experience, isn't it?
It is, and you learn something every time. It's like reading a scripture. I can read a scripture, the same scripture every day, 3 days in a row.
Okay.
It means something in my life a little differently each day, depending on what's going on that day. And that's the magic of Scripture and the magic of being in the Holy Land. You learn something different every time.
Now, is Harry Welton still organizing trips?
Yes, he is. Harry Welton's based in Gurnee, still organizing trips, and I still work with Harry.
Oh.
And going to raise trips, groups of people to go on trips from here.
Mm-hmm.
And so I still work with Harry Welton, and we are close friends also. So it's a good partnership. I had planned a trip on next March, but I believe I'm going to postpone that for a while. But we'll see. But what God calls. But I hope to continue running these trips just from Nashville instead of Chicago.
Mm-hmm. My one of my camera people, Patricia Adams. I don't know whether you remember that name or not, but
I believe so. Yeah.
Yeah, she heard about it from a show that I did, a program I did concerning the trip, and she signed up for it. And she said that was a memorable experience for her, and she's looking forward to another trip and encouraging other people to take the trip. So
that's wonderful, and that's the way I was too.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Well, what do you leave as your legacy?
Well, I think that if you go into a church, and I look at the churches I've served, is not to look at a financial problem as the final problem. Financial problems are usually a symbol of something else going on,
mm-hmm.
and a symptom. And usually the issue is not financial, it's spiritual. The other thing is we have to be careful in all our churches not to spend our time trusting in what we can do for the church, but trusting what God can do for the church.
Okay.
And in that, we need to spend a lot more time praying for our church and for our churches and praying that God's will be done, not that we are going to do something with the church that supports our ego or our financial wishes, but that we serve God the best way we can with the church. That means reaching out to our neighborhoods. Our neighborhoods in Waukegan means reaching out to people we know who may be disadvantaged or hurting. It means reaching out to our families and
mm-hmm.
building bridges instead of burning bridges. If I learned through all the churches I've served that people basically want to do well. They want to be good people.
Mm-hmm.
They want to follow Christ. But many times they don't know how, and we're fighting a battle with the culture. And in every church I've served, and every denomination I know anything about, the battle is not between our denominations. The battle's between our Christian church and the culture.
Mm-hmm.
And we're losing the battle. We're losing the battle. Materialism and consumerism is winning. And we have to reach a point where we are promoting God's message in the world, which is not consumerism and not materialism, but neighborism, to coin a phrase, that we're to reach out to our neighbor and help with what we can, and that our treasure is not in the bank and it's not in the stock market and it's not in our IRAs. Our treasure is in heaven.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And if I had any legacy, it's that the focus on money is too great. The focus on spirituality is too little. The reading of the Bible is not enough. Bible studies are not enough.
Mm-hmm.
I've loved every Bible study I've ever been in, and I've learned something from every single person. And for that, I'm grateful. And I'm grateful for the ministry I've been in, and I'm grateful I was able to serve in Waukegan. And if I leave one thing, it's may God bless the people of Waukegan and all the churches there, and Waukegan First United Methodist Church. Mm-hmm. And they all reach out to their neighbors, and may God bless them. I love the people of Waukegan, and I wish them all well.
This is fantastic. What does the Bible say about being boastful?
You know, I thought about that. I looked back at the early church, the Desert Fathers, the mystics, monks in the desert, Macarius and Simeon and Ephraim Cyrus. Mm-hmm. They came to the conclusion, as did John Wesley, that the core, the crown jewels of Christian perfection are intent and humility. Mm-hmm. And if we have humility, we can't be boastful.
Okay.
And humility is something that we're not very good at in the United States, yet it's critical in ministry. It's critical as a Christian to be humble in our place and respectful of God and respectful of others. And in that humility, we grow and become larger. But when we're boastful and driven by ego, we become smaller.
Fantastic. Well, it's been very, very great having you, and I'd like to know your adjustment from Waukegan to Hermitage, Tennessee. What was a major adjustment you had to make?
Well, probably the major adjustment was retirement rather than moving. As a United Methodist pastor, we move when the bishop tells us to move.
Okay.
But in retirement, I changed and did not go to another church. I went to a different area. Now, there are a lot of United Methodists in the Nashville area.
Okay.
But and I found a wonderful church here, the Hermitage United Methodist Church. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. But the biggest adjustment was not physical or it was about being retired, which I'm probably still adjusting to. It'll probably be some time before I'm completely adjusted to that.
Well, what about your leisure time? Do you have any leisure time activities?
Oh, I have a fair amount of leisure time, and I like bicycling and reading and fly fishing and hiking. I like to be outdoors. I occasionally even ride my motorcycle when my neuropathy's not dead. Okay. Monday I took a 268-mile road motorcycle ride down the Natchez Trace and back.
Wow!
So I had a great time, and it was a beautiful day, and I felt pretty good that day.
Right. Yeah. My wife is from Natchez, Mississippi, and I know about the Natchez Trace down there.
Oh, wonderful.
Well, Reverend William Owen, it's been great talking with you again, and I just love these periodic, talks that we have. Hopefully, it will benefit someone that's listening to the program, and I hope you great success and just keep us in mind while you're enjoying your retirement in Hermitage, Tennessee.
Thank you, and God bless you.
Ladies and gentlemen, we've been talking with Reverend William Owen, retired, the First United Methodist Church, Waukegan, Illinois, and living in Hermitage, Tennessee. And he was volunteered to share his reflections with us. This has been Community Focus. My name is Dr. Waddell Brooks, Sr., your host.